welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, you guys are welcome too. Today I'm going to tell you about a project that I've had ongoing for the last several years. I've talked about it before on this channel, but it's been a long time and there's been some new things going on with it, so I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about that today and show you what's going on. A while ago I talked about a certain plant that I saved. It was my first plant I ever grew, and it was a gold mound spirea. Now the reason this is important is because I started growing that plant probably 4 or 5 years ago, and ever since then I have made money off of that one singular plant. And this is my favorite plant because it was the first one I ever grew, but they like to grow in the sun and they bloom pretty pink. Like you can kind of still see the pink color a little bit, but most of the blooms are already past their main time of blooming, so it looks a little ugly right now. Now obviously that spirea was in the yard of our old house, so I didn't dig it up and bring it with us when we moved to Florence. But what I did do is take plants that I had, plants that I grew from cuttings, and I took one of those plants and put it in the ground at our new home. And so now it's sitting right beside me, and it will continue to grow and be an infinite source of cuttings in the future. It's not really big enough right now, but this year I have a plan to get cuttings that I'm going to show you in just a minute, and I'm going to tell you guys exactly what I've made off of these plants so far and how it's going. If you are new to this channel, you may not know that I work at a nursery, but I do. I work at a nursery and I grow plants, I propagate plants, and I grow them, and I make some money off of it. It's just one of the projects that I have kind of grown up doing because my dad owns a nursery and he is the savvy dirt farmer. So just so you guys know, that is where this is all coming from. The spireas that I have growing out right now for next year are sitting right here in these 2 trays. I've got 2 trays of spireas that will be ready to sell next year. And soon I will be able to pot them up and start growing them out so that they'll be a reasonable size to sell next year. This is a tray of gold mound spirea. They are actually the babies of the original gold mound that I was talking to you about at the beginning of the video. I now use that plant to take little cuttings from it and make babies under the mist so that we always have an endless supply of gold mound spireas. Let's see, if I pull one out in particular, I can show you guys that these are going to be my source of spirea cuttings right now for this year. As soon as we get mist propagation set up, I will be able to take cuttings from each of these branches. Like this branch right here, there's like 3 or 4 cuttings on this branch, which is kind of crazy. I mean, this branch could eventually be worth like $20, you know, in 2 years, and that's just crazy to think about. But as soon as we get mist propagation set up, I'm going to be able to propagate these spireas so that I will have more for next year and the year after that. That's the thing with propagation and plants, is that it's just an ongoing project and you have to constantly be thinking about years in the future. But this plant in particular will be ready to sell next year, and as soon as I'm able to take cuttings off of it, I will whack it down, I'll prune it really well, and it'll be ready to flush out in a larger pot and be ready to sell next year. Almost 1 year ago on this channel, I did a video that I called Plant Cleanup. And I took a bunch of spireas that I had, pruned them, potted them up, watered them, did all of that good stuff to get them ready. I told you guys to sell this spring, and I did. As you can clearly see, all these plants just look like a jumbled up mess in these trays, and they need to just be taken out and fixed and redone. So I'm going to just pull out a random one right here. Yep, there's that one. And we're going to start getting it potted and getting it ready. Potting all these plants is really easy when you can do this. It's so easy. They don't look like very much right now, but as soon as they start putting on new growth, they'll become big, orange to yellowish, just golden balls of awesomeness. And I'll be able to sell them next spring, and they'll be great plants. Out of the plants that you guys just saw that I fixed up 1 year ago, I sold 25 of them this spring for a total of $200. So that was a successful project. You see, I propagated the spireas 2 years ago. I grew them out for 1 year, and then the following spring I was able to sell 25 of them, and I made $200. So that's kind of how plant math works, is that you start a plant, you grow it out, you sell it, and the process just happens over and over and over again, because then you take cuttings from the plants that you're about to sell and you just start all over. So that's why this project has been going on for me for about 5 years. In addition to just these gold mound spireas, I sell several other kinds of plants that I just randomly make projects out of throughout the year, because that's just kind of what I do. I work out here in the nursery, I find plants that are pathetic or small or whatever, and I try to revive them, I guess you would say, and then I end up selling them. So like, for example, these coral bells that are right beside me, I've made a couple of videos, even shorts about them recently, and how I cleaned them up, fixed them up, and sold 30 of them so far this year, after I just fixed them up about 4 weeks ago. And I made a total of about $195 so far on these coral bells this year. So that's really exciting. So all together this year, with selling coral bells, gold mound spireas, and a couple of random hostas, a random sedum, just some things that I've got sitting around that I sold this year, I made a total of about $450 just selling plants this year that I didn't buy. I didn't buy any of these plants. I either propagated them or I divided them, just like I divide all my hostas. So I didn't buy any of them, and it was $450 of pure profit, and that's why this is a really good project for me to work on. One of the reasons I do love growing spireas in particular is because they're easy to propagate, they're easy to grow, and they're fairly easy to sell. In my lap is one of the spireas this year that I had that I didn't sell because it never looked pretty. For some reason it was just kind of faded. As you guys can see, it's not really a golden color. It's kind of a light faded out color, so I'm not really sure what I'm going to end up doing with it. So the cycle will just continue on and on and on. I will continue to get cuttings from plants that I have growing out to sell, and then the cuttings will root, the cuttings will grow, and the cycle will happen over and over and over again. And I just keep on selling spireas. One thing that I have to keep in mind, and that anybody else who is growing plants has to keep in mind, is that sometimes plants die and you have no idea why. Like this plant in my hand, it is supposed to look like this right about now, but it died. I have no idea why. It rooted well in its tray, I potted it up, and it just died. And sometimes that's kind of frustrating because you don't know why, but sometimes you just have to go with it and know that some of them will die and you can't do anything about it. It's really cool to think that in my lap, these plants hold the potential of cuttings that will keep this project going for years and years to come. As long as I want to keep it going, it can, because I can always take cuttings from these plants, grow them out, and sell them. That's the whole cycle of plant math, growing and selling plants. I wanted to share how this project was going with you guys today, because I know I've talked about it before on my channel, so I hope all of that made sense and you get kind of an idea of what I'm doing and why I do all of this out here. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one.